Hi everybody. This is a review of Oracle of Oddities, and when I say Oracle of Oddities, I mean all three editions. Like many of you, I've ordered all three editions with the idea of combining them all. And I did for the first and second editions, and realized that I actually prefer them separated. And so when I ordered, or when the third edition came along, I was very conscious about keeping them apart, about leaving them out. And so these are the cards from the third edition. And in the third edition, I will try to link down below. I know there's a video by Donna, but I can't find it anymore. I'm not quite sure if Donna have scrubbed her tarot content. But she used to have 1, 2, and 3, and have a side-by-side comparison of all the three editions. So just really quickly, the box is a normal tuck box. I believe in the first instance she created it in a different printer, and then second and third I believe was created through like Make Playing Cards or Printer Studio, I can't remember. So this is the first edition, and this is not the charity edition, so you have the flower here is blue. The charity edition has a couple of flowers here in pink. The design is slightly different between the first and second edition, and then second and third is quite similar. I have done a comparison video between first and second edition, and I will link that at the end of this video. But when I obtained the third, I haven't really shared my thoughts or experiences or feelings about the third edition, because by then, I have to be honest with you, I was kind of a little over it. Lately, with the Ephemera edition tarot, and with the lack of success with the minors for me, I find myself reaching for the Oracle again and trying to figure out a way to work with the majors only, which have worked really well for me. And I'll share my thoughts about that in a separate video, and adding to what the gap that has been left by the minors with the oracles. And so I've been looking through it again. Just really quickly, second and third edition, sorry, that's the first. So second and third edition box is pretty much the same, with very minor tweaking. So the real significant noticeable differences really in the boxes between the first and the second. And in the first edition, the difference between the ordinary and the charity is the color of the flowers there. So that's the box, I'll put that aside. Now, what do I mean by combining it and I didn't like it? What I found is that after I combined the first and second edition of Oracle of Oddities, the voice is not as sharp, and so that the messages aren't as focused. They're a bit wider, of course, because you have more vocabularies, you have more words, you have more images that you work from. However, the insights that I obtained personally is a little bit more diffused. I wouldn't say as far as garbled, but it's diffused. While when it was working as a 30 or so oracle cards, or cards, images and words, 30 images and 30 words, with those 30, and because it was so well done, it was quite pointed. That's what I found. And as soon as I mixed the two together, suddenly the messages or the insights or the intuitive hits that I obtained, it's still very intuitive. It's a very intuitive deck. So it's, in that sense, it hasn't lost any marks. But in terms of, I liken it to composing an essay. If you remember composing an essay from either from school, from university, college, or whatever, you would notice that the clarity of your message is not in the number of words you write. It is in how tightly constructed your words are. And so a lot of the times we found ourselves not so much typing as many words as possible, but a lot of the time spent on editing. A lot of the time, from my personal experience, is the time is spent on trimming. And so I found, at least with words, I don't know about images, perhaps it is the way I read, perhaps it is the way I approach images and words on cards such as these. But I find myself needing to trim so that the messages are more pointed. And so if you are trying both ways, see which one fits you, I would highly recommend that you keep track of which cards belong to which edition. And then when you put them together, and if it doesn't work for you, if it is working in a more diffuse way that I found for myself, and you want it to be a bit more pointed, then you can split them apart again. What I found is that I haven't done so, and I literally have to hunt down various videos online so that I could keep track of, retrace what's first edition and what's second edition. And of course, a lot of people show their decks after it's combined, so that doesn't help. So I am experimenting and trying to combine the third edition, these ones, into the mix, totaling 80 instead of 90 because I removed the chakra cards, and see if adding yet even more words and images might be helpful, especially in conjunction with the majors, and I'll get back to you on that. I suspect not, and so I suspect I may need to split them all apart again, either according to the first, second, and third edition, or I may split them apart according to my own choice. So for example, there's a lot of really good pairings which came in the various editions. So for example, like this one here, this is a port. There's another similar image that came not in the same edition as this card. For example, that one there, that's Joy. And this is the third edition, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because, and you see here, and that's from the earlier edition. So that's Love and Joy. Love with this flower red with the heart, and joy is in just in the back of your mind there with the color of the upper chakra there. And this one as well. This one here, it says Release. And then there's another image from the other edition, I believe. Just let me check. Something like this. This is from the same edition. Embrace, Release. And let's check if there's similar images. There's a series of images that are not the same, similar, but pointing to different themes. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, because otherwise this is gonna, so it's like this basically. It's one of these ones like what was it just now? The Release and Embrace. So Release and Embrace. And so you could potentially, if you prefer, which I'm going to do, like this two here, I would put all of these cards together in one. So like this one here from one edition, and the other one there, if I am not mistaken, from the third edition, which is kind of doesn't really matter now because I've completely lost track which is which. And like that, I would want these two to be in one deck, because then it is tackling the same thing from different angles, and I quite like that. And so for the moment though, yeah, so that's it really. In that, for me, and like this here, listened and voice. One is passive, the other one is active. The other thing is, of course, there's a couple of cards that's double, and I also leave those two aside because I feel if we want to have double cards, then it's not fair that those two are the only ones emphasized with the duplicates. I think the voice is one. This is the cards that I've set aside. These two doubled up. So Joy, our Love, and Voice. And I feel that if there are going to be any emphasis made in the deck, I don't see why Voice and Love alone should be the only two that's highlighted. And so I put that aside just to be fair, so that we can get an even out, you know, insights. We can have an even reading for all the pictures or the visuals and the words. And these are the chakra cards which I set aside, because although I believe in the system of chakra as a way of seeing phenomenologically various phenomenon in the body. I do not believe, or I do not know, or I do not to read them in cards, as in what am I supposed to, so if this come out, what is it supposed to mean? I'm not quite sure yet for myself. So does it mean, I mean, as I've mentioned before, when there are chakras in cards, I've often used them symbolically. So if these chakras came out, I often think whatever the chakra represent in the body, that's what the card is about. And so I could use it that way, but at the moment I choose not to, because it has a very different tone compared to the very free-flowing symbolism that is scattered throughout the deck. And then suddenly we have the Ayurvedic system there, the chakra cards, which it kind of threw me off a little bit. So I'm putting that aside for now. I'm not throwing them away, I'm just putting them aside. Yeah, so a great set of 3 cards, but I would highly recommend that before you bundle them together, to make sure that you can separate them back into the 3 editions if you don't like it, or if you don't necessarily want to keep them separate in the 3 original editions or original stack that they came in. I still think that it's good to know which belong to which, just in case you want to rejiggle them, or perhaps not. But I also would like to invite you to play around and basically group all the cards into one deck, and then if you don't feel that there's some need to trim the words and the images down to give a more pointed reading, then I think picking and choosing which cards to use at any one time could perhaps potentially give birth to an interesting system in itself, in that whatever you're drawn to, pick those cards at random and just use those instead of the whole stack of 90 or 80. Maybe pick 10, or sometimes pick 20, or sometimes pick 30, which is what I'm doing right now. And how that goes, I will definitely get back to you on that. So for now, that's my review of the Oracle of Oddities, first, second, and third edition. In particular, my review of my opinion and thoughts of combining them. The cardstock are consistent across the 3 editions, so there's not a problem. And it's very consistent with the tarot as well, except the back is not the same. So you can, sometimes I am also trying to mix them together and see how that goes, and then I'll split them apart again and see how that goes, and I'll definitely come back to you with that. So I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.